Hi, my name's Grant Maki. I'm a software engineer at Ford Motor Company. We worked on an elm app there for a little over a year. I'm here to talk about facilitating technical change through cultural change and how we kind of got that ball rolling at Ford. So this talk kind of stems from my experiences. My career, I've spent my whole IT career at a bunch of big companies that hire hundreds or thousands of developers. Something you see when you work at a company like this is some teams are really good at trying new things. Other teams really struggle to try new things. And the question arises why. At first you kind of think, oh, it's because of the people on the teams, right? This team probably has more curious people and this team doesn't. But after a while you realize that's not true. So I've seen teams sitting right next to each other, not 50 feet apart. This group over here is great at trying new things. This group over here struggles. I've been on both kinds of teams. And I've seen the teams have roster turnover between them. People move from A to B and B to A. And still this is pretty sticky. So the question arises, why are some of these teams so great at trying new things and modernizing their technology stack while others struggle? So I'm going to talk about that today. I got 3 things to talk about. Why some teams are good at trying stuff, why it can be hard to try stuff, and how to start trying stuff, how to get this ball rolling on your team. So why are some teams good at trying stuff? This is really the big question, and the big answer is they try stuff. They try big stuff, they try little stuff, they try stuff all the time. This seems kind of silly, but if you think about, for example, weightlifting, right? Someone who's really good at lifting weights, they lift weights. That's how they got there. If someone comes up to me and they're like, hey Grant, I'm going to bench press 350 pounds. I'm going to be like, that's awesome. I hope you also bench pressed 300 pounds and 250, and you kind of got this continuum figured out. It's kind of a similar way if you're like, hey Grant, my team is going to try Elm. I'm going to be like, that's good. I hope that works out. I also hope you've you know that your team is pretty good at trying stuff, right? Otherwise, you're not going to hurt yourself like a weightlifter would if they tried to bench press too much. But, you might not be successful if you've not built up this skill over time. And the really way I kind of like to think about this more concretely is teams that are good at trying things have this shared history of trying things. They have this shared history of trying new things that they can reflect back on that makes them feel good about trying things together. And that's an established pattern for them. It's like a norm on their team. So let's dig a little deeper into this. What are some different ways this pans out? The most obvious way, shared history level 1, is having tried some stuff successfully. So this is pretty straightforward, right? You try something, it goes well, you feel good about trying stuff. Next time you're thinking about trying things with your team, it's a little bit easier. One way this is played out, it can be little ways. Recently, a while back, one of my teams, we had trouble telling when our app was down, right? Our app would go down, customers would complain there's this lag time between the problem and us solving it. And so we tried a bunch of little ways, a bunch of different monitoring tools, and what ended up really working for us was this little app that we spun up that hit some endpoints, and whenever any of them threw an error, and pushed a notification to Slack. Now we know right away when our app is down, and sometimes we were even able to fix things before our customers saw a problem, right? So this is a really low investment, high reward thing, and it has this little benefit that when we're talking about trying something new in the future, we can always point back to this little thing, right? When people are like, why are we trying stuff? We're like, well, remember that little bot that we made, right? That's saved us so much time and gotten us so much value. Trying things has value, right? So the next level of shared history, level 2, is having been supported through failure. So this is a rock climber, right? And she's got these ropes to protect if they fall. And I'm not a big rock climber, but I've rock climbed a couple times. When you fall and you totally fall off the rock and the rope catches you, you realize, oh, if I fall, I'm supported, right? Now you feel empowered to try things that might be a little bit risky, right? You might fall, but you might also make it. And this helps you improve a lot faster than you would if you were only doing safe things that you would do without ropes. To kind of tie it back to tech, a few years ago, I was on a team that operated in a way where tech leads were assigned from the more senior people on the team, right, for each project. So each project got a new tech lead. I was, fairly junior, but then one day they made me a tech lead, right? They were like, for this project, it was a big project, customer facing, touched legacy code, it was pretty complicated. They're like, Grant, you're the tech lead. And I'm like, boom, I feel like Superman. I am so strong, I'm like strutting around the office like, what's up, I'm a tech lead. And so, okay, like it's going pretty well. Like there's some late changes, right? Right before our release, but I think we got them in. Things are going okay, and we had this release cycle where you take the site down, and at 2 a.m. on a Sunday or something, everyone gets up at 2 a.m., does the release, put the site back up, right? That's how we worked at the time. So we do this, and I get there at 2 a.m., and the thing gets off to production, and I don't feel like Superman anymore. I actually really envy this dog. If this dog had been out at the time, like I was trying to say this is fine, but I didn't feel like stuff was fine. Like there were so many bugs. I don't know how we didn't find them earlier, but they were everywhere. Once we actually got it to prod, our users hated the thing. It was just a nightmare. And it's like 2 a.m. on a Sunday, right? Like you're not at your best anyway. We kept trying to fix the bugs, but there was legacy code. So we did the legacy code, fix a bug pops up, whack-a-mole thing. We can't fix it. We roll it back. We're like, okay, we'll come back tomorrow and have another late night session. It's going the same way, no better, right? I'm pretty sure I'm fired at this point. So imposter syndrome's a real thing. It's a real thing I struggle with. For those not familiar, it's the concept that you might seem okay at your job, but the person struggling nonetheless fears that they're not as smart as everyone thinks that they are, and that sometime this is going to be revealed, and everyone will be like mad at me for tricking them, right? They'll be like, it's okay to not be smart, but you tricked me, So at this point, like, I've been tricking my teammates, right? Like, I think I'm going to lose friends, I'm going to get fired, like, I'm just done. And I feel this tap on my shoulder, and like, we didn't have security walking around at 2 a.m., but I think it's security, right? And I'm like, it's my coworker, right? And he's like, hey, like, this sucks for all of us. Like, I know this sucks for you, but like, don't worry about it. We're going to fix it. We're going to move on. I don't really believe him, whatever. The next day we fix it though, right? And then the next day I go up to my boss and I'm trying to apologize to the guy, and he stops me while I'm apologizing. He's like, look, everyone earns their stripes sometimes. You just earned your stripes. And I'm like, okay, but I'm really sorry. And he's like, no, like, you earned your stripes, it's done. People didn't stop trusting me, right? People didn't stop asking me questions. People didn't stop coming to me when they had a problem that I might be able to help them with. My friends were still my friends. A scenario like this, especially for someone who does the imposter syndrome thing, like, I feel so much more comfortable after something like this. It's like, I know I'm not fooling anybody anymore. Like, like, we're all here together, right? This is. I feel so much more empowered to try something new and not have this anxiety hanging over me after something like that. So, shared history level 2. Shared history level 3 is boosting each other. I like this picture a lot. This little goat, he can't get leaves normally. He can only get leaves when his horse friend is boosting him, right? So I had this happen just last week. Yeah, I was the goat. Yeah. So we were trying to deploy, it was a really simple thing actually. We were trying to deploy this little simple app that was doing some new things to us, but into AWS, right? And that was new for me. I'm not an AWS guy. And it was new for my partner I was pairing with too. And like I would suggest some little thing that I thought might work, and then that would kick something in her mind, and she would suggest something, and we kind of, like at the beginning I feel like I knew about like 10-20% of what we were going to do, how the roadmap was going to work, but like we kept filling in the blanks for each other. And I just remember I had this moment when she was pushing the final thing to production, and we were going to be done, and I was like, man, like I couldn't have, like this would have taken me weeks without her, and here we've done it in a couple of days. And as I'm kind of basking in the warm fuzzies, right, she turns to me and she says, like, I'm so glad you're here. Like, I couldn't have done this in half the time without you. And it was like, what? We can't both be the goat, right? Like, so like next time there's something that I don't really understand, like that, someone's like, hey, can you and her like do this together? I'm going to be like, oh yeah, with my horse friend, yeah, I'll get up there, no problem, right? So again, this kind of stuff, it all adds up, right? We get this. I hope you guys can see that slide. It looked great on my machine. It looks great on my machine. It's a snowball effect. There's a bunch of snowballs up there. The snowballs are of increasing size as the snowball rolls down the hill. That's how it works. So I got a really good snowball story that involves Elm. So when I first joined my recent team at Ford Motor Company, right, we were starting to transition to this new language, Elm. I didn't, most of us had little experience with it. And this team that I was joining, I knew I was joining a team that liked trying stuff. That was clear, like in the interview process and just meeting with people. They talked about trying stuff all the time. They've been doing this for a long time, but still, to go back to the weightlifter, Elm's a big, heavy lift, right? And so it was a very slow process. There was learning exercises, there was coding exercises, there were toy apps that were thrown away, there was rewriting small widgets in Elm, and and then finally rewriting a page in Elm, and then finally, we're an Elm team, right? This took months. We're experimenting, we're hesitating every step of the way, we're making sure everything feels good, and this is exactly how you should do something. If you should do things incrementally and slowly like this. But so keep that in mind. That process, that taking months, 6 months, 6, 9, something like that. A good while later, we continue trying stuff the whole time. The snowball's continuing to roll down the hill. Maybe we're at 4 or 5, stage here on our little diagram. A coworker thinks we should try Kotlin. This is the whole sales pitch. Like, we've been a Java shop, right? He says, some of those functional things we can do in Elm, you can do kind of similar things in Kotlin in a way that I think would help us make some of these problems we're having in our Java code easier to solve. Do you guys just want to try it for a week? If you don't like it, we'll just throw it out. And I looked at my partner I was pairing with, and I was like, I don't know anything about Kotlin. Do you know anything about Kotlin? She was like, no, but maybe it'll be nice. Let's try it. And that was it. Like, our team tried Kotlin. We just jumped right in after very little discussion. We were just able to try it. And so that's kind of the snowball effect that I'm talking about here, how over time you build up the skill of trying new things, but also the feeling that you can try new things, and the feeling that this is a safe thing to do and even a fun thing to do. So that's the snowball effect. A history of trying stuff helps people feel really good about trying stuff. So that's why some teams are good at trying stuff. They have this shared history of trying stuff that makes them feel good about it. Why can it be hard to try stuff? To answer this question, let's kind of look at how we typically go about it, right? We go about trying to help our team try something new, usually with a sales pitch. If we're trying to sell someone on Elm, we might talk about immutable data, we might talk about no runtime errors, and these get people interested. They might spark some new ideas, but a step ahead is to do something like look at this blog post Evan wrote a couple years ago, how to use Elm at work. It talks about, doing the kind of experiment, evaluate, learn, repeat loop. It talks about making small incremental experiments. It talks about all kinds of good ways to introduce it at work. That's kind of a way to level up, but the problem is we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We've mapped out this little plan here, right? The finish line is where we decide whether we want to use Elm on our team. There's one hurdle. It's teaching our team about Elm, and we're just going to run up to that hurdle and jump over it and get to the finish line, right? Well, the problem is there's other hurdles, right, that we're not even thinking about. It's important to think about all the hurdles when we're hurdling. Kind of hurts otherwise. So I'm gonna introduce you to some doggos here, right? These doggos are going to describe these hurdles for you. And we're going to try to get you from where you are now, before all the doggos, to at least up to the Elm hurdle. And then hopefully some other people will help you out with that. Hurdle number 1 is the fear doggo. So fear doggo gets treated really unfairly in our industry. People just go like, you've got fear of the unknown, man. Like, you need to get past that. Our industry's all about change. And it is all about change, but That's really not empathetic or useful way of going about this, right? So if we're on a tech stack, right? We're on tech stack A. Like, a person can be really good at tech stack A and can get like some personal satisfaction from helping their teammate with tech stack A, right? Like, that's a thing that they value about their life. They might just like it. It might just be fun for them to use tech stack A. So when you say like, let's use Elm instead of this thing that you like and derive personal satisfaction from, like, yeah, they're going to be kind of defensive and scared, right? And, you know, as we've talked about, a history that includes supporting people through failure and supporting people through changes, and the feeling of being able to stand on each other's shoulders really goes a long way to helping address this hurdle, but it's important to have an empathetic response. The other aspect of this we've touched on as well is imposter syndrome, right? Do you guys like how I got the dog to pose the same way with the glasses on? It's a good dog. It's a good dog. I'm such an idiot. So yeah, we talked about imposter syndrome, the fear that people will realize that you're an idiot. Okay. As I was laying out in my story about the other dog that saw the fire and said things were fine, this is huge for people with imposter syndrome. And as someone who talks about imposter syndrome, like, I kind of, like, more people will come up to me and say, like, oh, this describes me too. Like, I think this is like 30% of our industry, if not more. And I think a common thing is that some people will say, like, oh, but my team is really smart, right? Like, I work at Google, we only hire the smartest people. I think it's actually worse at places where, like, everyone's really smart. You're, like, more afraid of not measuring up, even though you do. So I think it's just from an empathy perspective important to know to realize how prevalent this is, even if it's not necessarily obvious, because people try to hide it. So that's the fear dog. Hurdle number 2 is the skeptical doggo. So skeptical doggo here is like, why we got to try Elm? We've been doing a pretty good job with whatever we're using. We're also in the business of delivering working software, not the business of trying all the new cool toys that come out. So let's focus on that. And again, skeptical doggo's got a point, right? Like, that is the business, is delivering working software, unless you're really lucky. But we've got to have a balancing act, right? We got to improve some and work some. And you know, a shared history with lots of positive outcomes from experiments where the team gets better and more efficient is a good way to sort of help satisfy the skeptical doggo enough to move on to the next hurdle, right? Hurdle 3 is option overload. This poor puppy, he's got a React ball in front of him, he's got a Vue tennis ball in front of him, he's got a Reason ML ball. There are so many tennis balls. He doesn't even bite a single tennis ball, he just puts his face down. Like, I have made this happen on a team, right? Like, a few years ago, I'm at a .NET shop. We're having all this trouble with this JavaScript, especially there are particular pieces of JavaScript that we just, like, will not touch. Like, there's a comment above it, don't touch this. And I tried to touch it, and I shouldn't have, and so I left the comment there. And this guy comes, and he says, look, I can make this actually pretty nice with TypeScript. And he does that on his local machine. He makes it's really nice in TypeScript. It solves our problem. It's understandable. It's great. But the problem is, at this time, like, I'd just been learning about Clojure and ClojureScript. So this is my first time I've seen functional programming. I'm so excited. And when someone says Alt.js, I go, ClojureScript. And every time he starts to bring this up and is trying to help the team, I'm like, but do you want to talk about ClojureScript? And I just start talking about it. And everyone else on the team is like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to work. Like, it just destroyed the meeting, right? So don't do that. The point here, though, is that when a team, this is a little bit more subtle how your shared history helps you out with this. When your team's got this long established tradition of we're trying stuff all the time, like, you're not in option overload anymore. It's like, okay, well, let's, like, grab some balls that look interesting and talk about how we're going to evaluate them, right? But you know that you keep on trying things. So the problem here in my team was we didn't try things all the time. So it was like, should we make this big exception for TypeScript? And then once you start bringing in other tennis balls, the team has no apparatus to handle that, no apparatus to try many things. It's like, we're going to try, like, one thing, like, for the foreseeable future. So we got to like pick now, right? It makes it too hard to deal with this option overload. So an important point here is the doggos come first, right? When we are confronted with something, especially something big like trying elm, we have this emotional, instinctual, gut level, mammal brain, whatever you want to say, reaction. And then we justify it, right? We come up with reasons. And then the reasons sound smart. But like, whether you're a person who loves change or a person who hates change, it's because you've got some emotional reaction to it. And so if there's not a shared history there that gives people reason to have a happy emotional reaction, or at least a comfortable emotional reaction to trying something new on the team, one of these doggos is going to start barking, and they're not going to be able to satisfy it enough to move on, right? Again, the idea of training, you need to train this stuff before you get to the elm hurdle. But once you do, right, you can start jumping over them. People feel supported, and they know that they can rely on each other and stand on each other's shoulders. That makes them feel a lot less afraid, right? When some experiments have gone really well and had positive return on investment, the skeptical dog can at least be answered, right? And when we have this long history of trying new things, we know we're going to get to be able to try various different options. We can have a practical conversation here. Like, the point isn't that these hurdles go away, but your team's in a position to go ahead anyway, right? And then we're finally at a point where we can start talking about elm, and does it have a role on our team? If you're at a point where your team is feeling good working together, where you can really get here, like, it's not that hard, right? You need someone who is good at teaching elm and kind of knows about it on the team. There's good resources out there. A year ago, Richard gave this talk, Teaching Elm to Beginners. It was about teaching elm to beginners. It's a pretty good resource. So yeah, there's that. We talked about why some teams are good at trying stuff, because they got this shared history. Why it can be hard to try stuff, because if you don't, people are probably going to be, have these doggos barking at them. So let's talk about how to get trying stuff. By trying stuff. So yeah, the main point there was like, so even just trying stuff in a kind of a blind way is helpful. You'll get better at trying stuff together. But to get the most out of each experiment, like if you want to try stuff in a way that's designed to improve your ability to try stuff, that's what these ideas are about, and that is try things openly and together. And so by openly, I just mean talk about it a lot. The point of talking about it a lot is to share the experience of trying the new thing beyond the people who are trying it, right? Probably on your team you've got a couple people who are going to be trying something, and then more people who aren't. And so the idea here is to, if things are going well, talk about the benefits of the experiment with the larger group, even with other stakeholders in management. If things are not going well, talk about how people had good ideas and made positive contributions and other things you may have learned. Share that failure is not a crushing experience and doesn't have negative connotations with everybody. If you're standing on each other's shoulders, let the group know, this person had this great suggestion that, led me to think of this other thing, and I couldn't have done it without them, and thank them, right? That public gratitude is a huge positive for people. And by together, I mean like go sit down together. Get two people, like the Muppets, or a group of people, mob programming, like my old teammates over here on the other side, and sit at one computer and work on stuff together. I really advocate strongly for this. If 3 people want to try something, and they all go their separate ways, and they try something, and then they come back and talk about it, they probably learned a lot. They probably ran a good experiment. They did not build a shared experience. If the point in how you're trying to try stuff is to build this shared experience on your team of trying stuff, you can't really substitute or make up the feeling of working together, and the little encouragements that you give each other, the little, oh, that was a good idea even though it didn't work, or the little high fives that you give each other when things go well. That really builds up this subtle sense of camaraderie and trust. So I recommend it a lot. And then another point is, it's important that experiments are experiments. Like if say we're trying elm and it's not working, or the team doesn't like it, it's important to back off if you're looking to build the idea of the team's ability to try new things. So if people with influence on a team just push things through over the team members' objectives, the next time they come back to try something else new, those dogs are going to bark, right? They're going to remember, well, I don't even think that our previous experiment was really that useful, but here we are doing another one, right? They're going to remember, I didn't really have a say in this, and you're taking away the tech stack that I have now that I like. And it's going to be much harder for them to invest in trying something new the next time. So that's a no-no. So here's 6 things to try. These are just ideas. These are meant to be little seeds that you can take and plant and come up with your own ideas, just get you on the road. So idea number 1 is pair or mob programming as an experiment in itself. So not all these new things have to be technical, right? They can be ways of working or anything else. And the thing about working together in this way is it's kind of an independent skill. So when people are new to it, they often struggle with sharing keyboard time or letting other people follow their chain of logic to its conclusion before interjecting with their own. There are a lot of skills with pair mob programming that need to be developed, and if the team is not good at doing them and you're using pair programming to try something else, that inexperience can put a sour taste in the team's mouth about the other experiment, which isn't the best thing. So I would suggest working on this as an experiment to get yourself started if you're not already working in this way. Idea 2 is 10% time, power up time, goes by different names. A lot of organizations do things like this, but it's the idea of having some amount of time reserved every week for learning and development that's often pretty self-directed. This gives you, why this is so great is it gives you a really low stakes way to introduce all kinds of ideas and see what sticks. If you've got something like 10% time, you can just start showing people Elm and see if they like it without any kind of pressure that says, this might be your future, right? Just see how they like it. And if they don't like it, they can, try something else the next time. On my team at Ford, we've done all kinds of goofy stuff. We've done book clubs for things like site reliability engineering that aren't really our wheelhouse. We've watched videos about the airline industry's IT security or lack thereof, just different things to get yourself thinking in different ways. Idea 3, tinker with internal apps or tooling, like this guy sharpening his saw. You can sharpen your saw too. These are good things to do because you can see the benefits, right? If you've got a continuous integration pipeline that took a half hour to run and you do some experiment and get it down to 5, that's a benefit you can see forever. And you can always point back to that when people are, skeptical about experimenting and justify more experiments. Experimenting with workflow. Every team I've been on that is good at trying technical stuff tries stuff with their workflow all the time. They change around meetings, they change around the structure of meetings. If they have a board where they track their work, or whether it's virtual or physical, they change that around too. These are, again, really low stakes things that you can try out. If your team is not so strong at trying things out, they're kind of a little easier than something like a new programming language, right? Number 5, if you're really struggling, try something inconsequential. One team I saw that felt very, what am I trying to say? Locked down in terms of all their choices. They all changed their desktop background, and this wasn't an intentional thing, but they all had this goofy desktop background that they put on. And this wasn't like a panacea, right? But it was like a baby step. After they had this goofy joke desktop background, they started doing some other little minor tweaks to their workflow and other little things. And I just wonder if that was the first little step that made them say, we can't change everything, but we can try some things, right? And eventually get value out of that. And this is probably my favorite idea, get people taking breaks. So when I've been on shops where you get in and you put your head down and you code and then you leave and you don't take breaks, there's no time to think of good ideas. You're not going to try stuff because you don't think of ideas to try stuff because you're coding and then you're exhausted, and those are your 2 states, right? You need to take a step. You need to get people taking a step back to come up with ideas for new stuff to try. Take a walk, or even better, this is my favorite, do puzzles. My team at Ford did puzzles. This is one of our puzzles that we did. I did most of the hippo. I'm pretty proud of that hippo. So a puzzle is a really relaxing thing, right? It kind of gives you something calm to take your brain off what you were doing. And when you get 3 people around a puzzle, calm and down like that, they start making jokes. But then when you come up with an idea, you've got 3 people there relaxed to bounce the idea off of. And, good things kept coming out at puzzle time. So I have had another team try to put out a puzzle, and it was just like it was a bridge too far. Like we hadn't established breaks first, and then we were going straight to puzzles. So maybe you got to get breaks, and then you can get a puzzle once you can take breaks. But it's really good to do puzzles. So try stuff together. That's really the main point. I had to put up all those other slides because I wanted you to take the slide really seriously. So try stuff together. Just freaking do it, man. If you want to follow up with me, I'll be around in real life. That's what my face looks like. I'm also in Twitter. It's me, Grant Maki, is my very creative handle, and I'm on the Elm Slack as Grant Maki. My name's not that common. Just search it. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for listening to me.